You are listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with a global soul. Our theme music is a clip of Summer Nights by the Eric Jones Trio. It's provided by our friend Mark Chesanout, who plays with the Eric Jones Trio every Thursday and Sunday at Good Times Jazz Bar downtown.
Hey everyone, welcome to Arts on the Air. This is Tamara Garvey and I have the pleasure of sitting down with Ivan Chow. Welcome, Ivan.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm going to read a little bit from your Instagram bio. Ivan has sketched around the world in the capacity of architect, educator, artist, and author, and currently lives in Savannah, Georgia. And I did want to point out, I first came across your work through you have a public Instagram page that's your watercolor and ink sketches around Savannah and around the world. And then I'd seen your book in E-Shaver called Sketching Savannah. That's a beautiful kind of visual diary. But then in researching you, I learned that you are trained and professionally as an architect, which is very cool. So let's get started. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about your first interest in architecture, how old you were?
Oh, we're going that far back, huh?
We are.
Okay.
We start at the beginning of your creative process.
Oh no. Well,
You can be brief.
I've actually wanted to be an architect since I was 10.
Okay.
So that was a while ago. In fact, my father was an architect. We were in Singapore. He practiced there in a partnership, and then I got involved with just doodling, you know.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where my interest in drawing began, 10, 11, 12, into my teens. And I kind of decided that's what I wanted to pursue, become an architect. So, again, this is long story short, right? Of course, like everyone who is interested in the field, you want to be a great architect.
Right.
You know?
Nobody wants to be mediocre.
Oh no, greatest in the world, right? So I began to pursue just dabbling around, drawing plans and little sketches here and there. But when our family immigrated to the United States in the 1970s, 75 or something like that, went straight into architecture school, both undergraduate and graduate school. And, right after that, started practicing, interning.
Yeah.
With,
You moved to the U.S. at college age, basically.
College age, yeah. I was about 18. And I worked for a few years. All that was required for me to sit for the architectural registration examination, right? That was a big deal back then, still is.
And this is in Massachusetts?
This is in California.
Okay.
We basically live in two zones before moving to the southeast, California and Massachusetts, back and forth.
Yeah, it looked like your career kind of bounces back and forth.
Yeah.
Right.
Worked for a couple of years and then studied to take the architecture registration examination. And back then, it was a 4-day ordeal, 8 tests in a row. You sweated blood when you did that. Studied like crazy ahead of time, a little nervous about it. But I did, sat for it. In fact, I passed it on the first attempt, which was borderline miraculous.
Really? Was it quite common to not pass it right away?
Uncommon.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was pleasantly surprised I didn't have to keep doing it.
That's great.
So I got licensed in 1986, and I worked in various firms in California. Had my own sole proprietorship for, I think I did all that for about 20 years.
Wow.
Different firm sizes, from Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, which is a big firm in San Francisco, to my own practice, just me.
Would you do both residential and commercial?
Yes, so it was pretty much my focus. I love residential design, renovations, did some light commercial work. For a while I actually did some work for a real estate developer, which was sort of a sordid period in my career.
Like not as creative, I guess?
It was creative in all the wrong ways.
Okay.
Designing homes marketed for first-time home buyers that were enamored by the front facade only, and basically was anyway.
Interesting.
It was
all about the curb appeal, the facade.
All about the curb appeal.
Huh.
But that didn't last too long, thankfully. But after about 20 years or so, I joined a startup real estate investment firm in Boston. this was a friend of mine who had a bunch of investors from Asia who had this vision or mission of doing good by doing well. That was their mantra, and they wanted to do it through real estate. So I joined the firm as vice president of development, and eventually, after about a dozen years, maybe became the managing director of the firm, and I just went into real estate. This company wanted to have an impact using the profits that they made, and so they would dedicate a chunk of change every year to either donate or contribute to good causes.
Okay. Were you still doing actual designing during that phase?
Yeah, and so basically through all these experiences, I was always drawing.
Okay.
So even I found a couple of pictures the other day that showed me drawing on, I think it was a hotel bed. And when I first started this real estate investment firm, I was developing a piece of property. We were developing a piece of property, and there was no place for me to draw because I had just moved to the Boston area, so I was drawing on the hotel bed. But through it all, I just kept drawing. Just had an interest in it, could do it fairly well, and I just didn't want to have the company pay for somebody else to do the work when I could. Right?
What era, do you remember kind of what era it would shift in architecture from doing plans hand drawn to doing like computer programs?
Yeah.
To draw
so this is another area of interest of mine, but I can talk about it later on. When I was in grad school in the early 80s, CAD started to take over and be firmly embedded in educational curriculum, for architects, interior designers.
Okay. This is when you went to Harvard for your master's?
Yes.
Okay.
And very soon after that, it became a mainstay of most of these programs, and hand drawing began to take a back seat. In fact, I developed a whole talk on this for a continuing education program about how we are actually, our students today graduating without the ability to draw by hand or at a disadvantage in a variety of ways, especially cognitively. But anyway, that's a whole nother subject. But yeah, CAD did take over about 25 years or so ago.
Okay.
And now we've had a couple of generations to look back on, to evaluate the pros and cons of all that technology invading our world.
So that's interesting. So just as you were going to grad school, it was this like huge kind of seismic shift in the way that you were going to be working and then working professionally after that.
In architecture, you don't have to pick a field per se in order to get licensed. In fact, a lot of times you don't know what you want to do until you reach that point. So grad school is intended to extend your education in architecture, hopefully to gain more competence.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of, just like doctors, it's a matter of just putting in the time.
It would have been, I guess it would have been so interesting if you had not gone to grad school then and you still were working, and then at some point in just your work life, things would have switched from you hand drawing to computer drawing, but you wouldn't have had the benefit of like learning these programs in school. That would have been really different.
Yeah, and that actually happens now. A lot of people learn the technology as they work. Right? I mean, it's not stuff you learn only in school. You pick it up along the way. In fact, CAD is indispensable as far as I'm concerned in this day and age. But in a way at the expense of hand drawing, which has benefits that we may not fully realize. But again, that's another
just topic. I mean, I guess it can be super beneficial for the field in general, but you don't want to lose hand drawing entirely.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
You just need a balance. So all these years you still would be doing on your own. You just really liked doing the ink and watercolor drawings for your own fun.
I tried different methods and approaches. So back then I was using ink and markers you remember those the AD markers?
Yeah, or like Copic markers, things
yeah,
like that.
I mean, those are the things, if you smell too much of it, you...
Yes, they were very strong.
Very strong. We did a lot of that because at that time they were still using that technology of diazo printing. Do you know that process?
No, tell us about that.
And it's ancient. It's you draw something on tracing paper and you run a print of it through a diazo machine. There's a blue light that transfers through the tracing paper onto this coated print paper, and it comes out in these beautiful prints.
Okay, it comes out opaque.
But it has VOCs like crazy.
The printer did?
Everything.
Okay.
Everybody that touched that material would just smell this.
So you're just getting high in this room.
It's ammonia, basically.
Yeah.
It's developed using ammonia. But everyone in my generation of architects growing up would be absolutely familiar with the whole idea of starting. When you started in an architecture firm, the first thing that you were always tasked to do was make prints.
Wow.
Down in the print room using these diazo machines. Anyway,
is that printer just not used anymore?
Yeah, it's obsolete. You can't find those anymore. Anyway, but that's how we grew up. And the paper that diazo prints were made on was conducive to markers. They're fully absorbent. You can do a lot with it. So that was the technology or the methodology of the day, right? But that transitioned really quickly when we went into black and white printing using the laser printing. It's a different process altogether, and markers will completely dissolve all the ink that would print on this paper, and so that whole method kind of like fizzled.
Okay, so then you had to find
we had to find new ways to do it.
Yeah.
But then by that time, CAD came on strong, so people were rendering, or sending to printers to render all their artwork, and so those of us who stayed with drawing by hand had to find new ways of producing this work.
Yeah, right? New material that would work.
But by that time, I had already moved out of mainstay architecture into real estate development, and shortly thereafter, I actually, when our kids moved out of the house, we had sort of a lull in the action before we made a big decision about where to move, to retire to. And for a couple of years, I worked at UMass Amherst as a capital projects manager, and I was like, all I did was manage projects.
Okay.
Didn't draw very much in those days. But then, about 10 years or so, we decided to move south, and I got a job at SCAD.
Were you applying at different art colleges, and you just happened to get SCAD?
Yes, I had tried a variety of approaches to how I wanted to get into academia, but the priority was to move somewhere not so cold.
Okay.
All right, from Massachusetts.
So what year was this that you came to Savannah?
2013-ish.
Okay.
Yep. So we got this job at SCAD as a director of the School of Building Arts. That was at that time primarily administrative managerial position to help the dean with projects and whatever needed to be done in the school. I really liked academia once I got into it. I saw the potential for what it could do to influence generations of students that were going into higher ed that would have a huge impact on our profession. Right?
Yeah.
So I got involved in curriculum design, and of course engaged in hundreds of students and their futures, and that was invigorating. But to the end, I ended up becoming associate dean and then dean of the School of Building Arts, where I was able to think about the future and what curriculum should look like. And I don't know that I had enough time to do this before SCAD and I parted ways. But had I stayed in academia, I think I would have pursued a more balanced curriculum, which included craft, which had essentially, in not just the case with SCAD, but many universities, craft has been kind of taken out of the curriculum.
Do you mean like making models? like building 3D models?
Using your hands,
Yeah.
right? To draw, to build. I'm not just talking about architecture, any of the creative pursuits, to pottery, sculpture, metalwork, like mad tool stuff, using your hands in this craft.
Yeah.
One of the books that our dean, midway through this time at SCAD, gave a copy to every faculty was a book by Johanny Plasma called The Thinking Hand, where he talks about the hand as being sort of a prodigious instrument of the mind, and without which creativity would suffer, right? The fact that you can touch something, whether it's a pencil or a pot or a lump of clay or a paper or scissors, with your hands, it has a significant impact on how creative you can be.
Yeah.
And it's very different from using a keyboard and a mouse.
Right. Yeah.
Or even with a stylus on
the tablet.
On a tablet, it's a very different process.
Yeah.
I don't know, you draw, so when you put a pencil on a piece of paper of some texture, the feel of it's so different between the stylus and the screen,
Yeah, even different from using a tablet for like a quote-unquote pencil tool. It just is different to put it on paper.
And it's a lot to do with that connection between the hand and the brain. Yeah. So anyway, I think I would have pursued that as a way of balancing the curriculum.
When students go through architecture school now, are they still building like 3D models out of little cardboard
things
and wood things? Okay, because I remember when I was young and I had architecture friends, they were always carrying around these huge 3D
That's
models.
how you cut your teeth. See, when I started my first job at Skidmore, Owens and Merrill in San Francisco, aside from running blueprints in the diazo machine room where all the ammonia was, I think for 3 or 4 months straight, I was just building models.
Yeah.
Cutting chipboard, cutting your fingers.
Right. Chipboard and like that balsa wood, that really thin wood. And you're using X-Acto knives and
things. Or you
could
graduate a foam core.
That's right. You would have. I remember my friends who did architecture, and they would have little trees would be dotted around. You had to conceive of all of that too. Sometimes they'd have tiny people.
So yeah.
To show the scale.
But nowadays, that has taken a back seat in most design programs in the country, and I think there needs to be a balancing out of that.
Yeah.
The resurrection of the use of craft, or the reintroduction of craft and the use of the hand.
I think there's more understanding of 3-dimensionally of what you're actually building that you get when you have to actually use your hands and put something together, as opposed to even if you are really good on the computer and doing things. There's just like a different level of understanding when you've had to put it together.
What I was going to maybe get to later on, if there's time, is that in the last 20 years there have been increasing numbers of neuroscientific studies that have demonstrated, actually proved, that when you use your hands to draw, to create a craft, it activates certain parts of your brain, the deep structures of your brain, and the limbic system, in particular this structure called the hippocampus, which is actually responsible for learning and memory and creativity. And now it's been proven that drawing by hand activates it to the tune of, you can recall anywhere from 25 to 50% more of what you think you remember if you actually draw it and write it. And people who draw by hand have an increased capacity to be creative and to solve problems. It's all connected to
so cool.
the rest part of your brain. Yeah. So it's very interesting.
That can be helpful for people working with like the elderly or people having memory issues to encourage them to draw.
Right.
Yeah. Did you ever, this is kind of just random, I was wondering if you ever worked with your dad on any project together?
No, the generations were too far apart, and he practiced in Singapore and Malaysia well before I started my education, so there was not much crossover. I recall drawing a plan in his office. I would just go down to his office on Emerald Hill in Singapore. I just randomly recall that. And did a couple of drawings there, but no,
Yeah.
not much in terms. In fact, I don't think we worked on any projects together.
Okay. Was he very supportive of you becoming an architect?
Yeah, clearly
Yeah.
he was excited about me pursuing that, and in general very supportive right through the educational phase of my life. But there wasn't. I think we came from different aesthetic backgrounds,
Okay.
and so we didn't actually talk much about architecture. Strangely, yeah.
That is a little strange.
Yeah, it is a strange. Cultural is a cultural difference because he was educated in the Far East and in England, and I was
Oh.
educated in the United States. And back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, those very different worlds. This was before, for example, it was before the American Institute of Architects recognized the Royal Institute of British Architects, the RIBA, which is the licensing component in England, and vice versa.
Huh.
They were like kept very separate.
They were wary of each other.
Just different.
Well, it's
Different
interesting that. So
worlds.
now you live in a town where the historic downtown, the architecture is so influenced by like Ireland and England, that era, right?
Yeah. It's a much smaller world we live in now.
Is there a particular era, or I don't know what the word would be, field of architecture that you've always just really liked aesthetically?
Well, residential has always been
Yeah.
close to heart. I think residential, primarily because that's where people live.
Okay.
They're
But I just didn't
close.
know, like a certain chunk of time, like a
Oh,
time
yeah.
period of the
Oh,
style of it that you've
oh,
always responded to,
oh,
or?
Wow. All right, so my sentiments in that area are bifurcated, right? Almost hypocritical, actually. On one hand, Frank Lloyd Wright had a big influence on me,
Yeah.
still does. On the other hand, I have a deep appreciation for historical precedents. So, love old buildings, the details
Yeah.
that involve craft and craftsmanship.
Like things that are purely decorative.
No, not things that are decorative but have meaning because they are done in such a careful way that just thousands of hours of time of crafting certain aspects of a building add meaning to the building.
Can you give an example of that?
Go around this town in particular. If you go to, if you look at the Masonic Lodge, what's it called?
The Shriners Lodge that is across from Shop Scad, that
Yes.
big building? Yes.
You look up at the dentals, the crown molding,
Yeah.
and all that, and you can't buy that stuff nowadays. It's so well crafted. It gives you a sense of permanence, gives you a sense of dedication, gives you a sense of commitment and beauty, and that no one wants to see that go away.
Right. It's very grand.
And examples all over the place. And where you find most of it is in Europe. Whereas, on the other hand, there is a lot to be said. I get enamored with modern, quote unquote, using my fingers here, architecture, where it strives for simplicity, which is sort of this maybe historic thrust between what human beings are always trying to do. On one hand, simplify. On one hand, build meaning and increase complexity, and you're always pushing and pulling throughout history. But it's
I was thinking an aspect of Frank Lloyd Wright. I mean, like you said, that it's pared down and simple, but everybody looks at it and marvels at the beauty. And I guess because he was really focusing on the buildings like coming out of nature,
Yeah.
almost like they were unearthing from nature. So it's like he's just building on the beauty of nature. So maybe the building itself can be a little more pared down and simple.
Yeah, I mentioned that Wright had a deep influence on me early in college and undergrad and in grad school. And full circle, in the last 5 years, have been deeply involved with working at Fallingwater.
Yes.
And
I saw that. I really want to talk to you about that.
yeah,
That was very cool.
Yeah. To that point that you just made, my appreciation for that building and Wright's work has deepened. Sometimes, familiarity breeds contempt, and definitely not in this case.
No. It just gets, I'm sure
Every
it
time you go
spurs
into
more
the
and more.
house, you just marvel at the level of thought that went into it, and how a building as relatively simple as that, through a singular conceptual decision that Wright made and the subsequent details that followed through by him and his team, has lasted almost 80 years and still attracts anywhere from 170 to 200,000 visitors a year.
Yeah.
It's an amazing,
Yeah, just so timeless.
it's an amazing symbol, I think, of maybe what people look for in architecture. But yeah, it's been lovely just being up in Mill Run. Mill Run is a tiny little. Have you been to?
No, I've been. I want to talk about this. We're at a good point for a station break.
Okay.
So when we get back, we will delve much more deeply into Fallingwater.
Cool.
So everyone, this is Arts on the Air, and I'm Tamara Garvey, and I'm with Ivan Chow, and we will be back.
You are listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with a global soul.
Trees are one of Chatham County's most treasured natural resources. Beyond their beauty and cultural significance, the impact of trees are far-reaching and compounding, spanning from economic benefits to health improvements to climate change resilience. Trees are woven into every aspect of our lives. Savannah Tree Foundation protects and grows Chatham County's urban forest through tree planting, community engagement, and advocacy. More information is available at savannahtree.org. This portion of WRUU's programming is brought to you by listeners and by Brighter Day Natural Foods. Brighter Day Natural Foods has been serving Savannah's healthy food and supplement needs since 1978. It is located at the corner of Bull Street and Park Avenue. They have online ordering and curbside delivery available, and now a walk-up window for smoothies, juices, and sandwiches from the deli. They are open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Sunday. More information can be found at brighterdayfoods.com.
What does it mean when we say that WRUU is a community radio station? It doesn't just mean that we invite the community to create programming, and it doesn't just mean that we're a voice for the community. It also means that we're counting on the community to keep us going, and you are the community. Almost all of our modest budget comes from small annual or monthly donations from listeners like you. You get to enjoy our community-focused programming because many others have stepped forward to do their part. Now do your part by joining our community of listener donors. Go to WRUU.org right now and make a one-time or monthly donation. And thank you for supporting Savannah's community radio station, 107.5 FM.
Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Arts on the Air, and I'm Tamara Garvey, and I'm sitting with Ivan Chow. Welcome back, Ivan.
Thanks.
So Ivan, we were talking about Ivan is a trained architect and has had a whole career as an architect, but the entire time, for 50 years, he's also been doing drawings of cityscapes and buildings, and it's always been ticking away in the background. And it looks like maybe 5 years ago or so, around 2018, you got is it called an Artist-in-Residency at Fallingwater, Frank Lloyd Wright's building? Can you talk a little bit about how you came into this?
Sure. It's actually someone I knew, worked with at SCAD, who then became the director at Fallingwater, and went up to visit him and got to know the staff up there, and one thing led to another, and was invited to be Artist-in-Residence, which is really a way of inviting artists to apply their craft, both on-site and off-site, through the inspiration of the building, right? So recalling, the first thing I did was 2 sketches of the house from the exterior, which I didn't think a whole lot of because I was doing it in one of the cabins that they offered to let me stay at while I was there. And then got excited, but I started drawing more and more of the building. And then one thing led to another, got involved in helping the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy, which is the, what do you call it, the steward of the property. They have a fairly large collection of buildings that were donated by the Kaufman family. And I was asked to do a survey of all the properties because of my background in architecture and urban design. So I did that, made some recommendations as to how they could manage the portfolio going forward. Then I got involved in something they had begun to formalize called the Fallingwater Institute, where it was like the educational arm of the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy related to Fallingwater, the building. And they had been running residencies and workshops, and they will begin to formalize that whole process. So I got involved teaching some of those residencies.
So it's pretty new for people to be having these residencies and
workshops
workshops
10 years there.
That's interesting that it hadn't been going on for longer.
It had been, but not in more of the formal way that it started to take shape. They hired a curator of education that really begun to formalize these offerings. Initially, the residencies were targeted at high school students, the younger generation, and quickly expanded into college and grad school. And now, in fact, so I've been teaching residencies for 5 years now, and the most recent one, completed in September, was the first time they had offered residency to design professionals. And in fact, we were able to secure, this is architect talk, American Institute of Architects, continuing education HSW units, which is health, safety, welfare units, 8 credits for attending this workshop. So it was a first for Fallingwater Institute.
So professionals can use this as a formal, aspect of their CV, basically. Yes. Is the actual Fallingwater house, is it in good shape conservation-wise, or had it fallen into kind of disrepair and it needed to be?
Well, Fallingwater has always
preserved.
been deteriorating just by virtue of the fact that Wright never intended it to last forever. The biggest challenge they faced about 20 years ago was the restructuring of the cantilever decks. So that's an amazing story. If you get a chance to read about it, it's online pretty much anywhere you find it. But the restructuring of the cantilever deck sort of began a wave of reconstruction to preserve the building.
Okay.
And that's ongoing. They just began a 3-year project of resealing all the grout in the chimneys, and basically the house is leaking, as one would expect it after 80 years of sitting out in the rain, and they're in the process of restoring all that and sealing the building.
Yeah. Is kind of everything that's happening to it related to it being on this body of water, basically?
No, actually, it's above the body of water.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of infiltration, but it is on a hillside, so there's a lot of groundwater that seeps in and around the building. There's a lot of rain out there in the year, and so over
it's like a beautiful
time,
leafy forest, right?
Yeah. It's, but I got involved with that, and I was invited to sell some of my artwork in the form of note cards and matted prints in a gift store, which was a first for me.
Yeah.
So I started to package those, as carefully and neatly as I could.
So were you printing them yourself? How did you go about getting this done?
Yes, I began by printing a few myself just to give it a shot.
Because this is so interesting. A lot of our viewers are people who are like getting into their own art fields.
Yeah,
And this
man,
whole
you buy a Canon Pixma 100.
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And
You take the jump, you start doing your own printing, and then
you
your
order
own
from
packaging.
Red River Paper, like everybody does.
Yes,
and,
yes.
You start printing these cards, and you find a place to buy little cellophane sleeves and envelopes. You slip it in there, and you have to make the big decision about the price point.
You have your own little assembly line of your packaging thing. So you start selling your prints and cards in the shop. Was that super exciting? It's like a whole different,
Very exciting.
whole different way of making money in art than you'd been doing.
And so, but you never know how it's going to do. You never know it's going to sell, not sell, how many are going to sell. So I started out printing your own, but very soon it became clear that they would do very well. And in the past 4 years, I think I've sold 5,000 or 6,000 cards and 1,500 prints.
I can imagine. I mean, your drawings are stunningly beautiful. So, of course, people at the gift shop are going to be buying your cards.
Also, and this is important for those looking to have long-term relationships with retailers. We had an agreement. I had an agreement with Fallingwater that I'll be the only hand-drawn product
Oh, interesting.
in the store.
So they can have other artwork of it, but it's computer designed art. Is that what you mean?
Or some other
Okay.
hybrid form.
Like there, okay,
It's
so
a-
there
it's a
could be
loose-
photo prints, but not other
Yes,
drawing
correct,
prints.
yeah.
Okay,
So
got
it's
it.
sort of a loose arrangement. I don't check, but
That's a good agreement you have with them.
it was usually beneficial because I can't sell that product anywhere else. One of the more exciting contributions and partner and sort of collaborations I did was for all the years that up until maybe 3 years ago, when visitors arrive at the property, they would go through the gatehouse and they'd be handed like an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper folded with a little tab on it that showed what time your tour was going on, scheduled for. And on that 8.5 by 11, there would be a map of the property, there'd be some rules, what you couldn't do, and then there'd be some information about the house on the back of it. And that's what every visitor would get.
Mm-hmm.
And the director thought, hey, we need to change that up and make something a little more formal, get some new, a new guide, a new visitor guide. So I came up with the idea, and I'm just sorry I didn't bring one for you. I'll give it to you next time.
We can post a photo with your show.
Of an accordion fold visitor guide, the size of a half-size notebook, a standard moleskin little sketchbook,
Okay.
that you could actually fold up and put in your sketchbook as part of a childhood experience. But I had it full color, no bleed product, accordion fold,
Yeah.
and I did all the drawings on it. They wanted a hand-drawn product to represent sort of the craft of the building and its designer.
Oh, wow.
So I did a watercolor of the building, watercolor of the house, and I had keyed all the different locations people could go to and what was what, and the visitor guide and all that. And it had a little history of the building, and a little section of what you couldn't do on the
Was it all
site.
your handwriting too?
I developed a font.
Okay.
I call it the Frank font.
Oh.
And I
wow.
actually wrote the letters the way Frank Lloyd Wright would have written it on a drawing, and I created a font with it, and I used that for the
Wow.
titles.
Because you have a beautiful, in your own sketchbooks, you have this really beautiful cursive writing that you do. But I would imagine the Frank font is more like on architectural drawings where it's very precise and easy to read, right?
Just the way you would see it on those
It's like graph paper sized letters, right? That's what I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's cool. You say
produced
it's
that.
a
They
Frank
liked
font.
Frank font.
I love it.
And they liked it. We produced the first printing was 10,000. That went really quickly, and then
And you had to come up with, so also designing this 3-dimensional book is like packaging design. That's a whole other field.
packaging design, and then getting it printed, finding the right printer at the right price.
It's a complicated thing to print.
To produce this thing in a timely fashion, have it delivered to Fallingwater, and then knowing that you'll have a long-term relationship with this printer,
Right.
you need to make sure that with the right printer, the right relationship, the right attitude towards this.
So each visitor is getting this piece for free when they
Well, they pay for the tour.
get the membership. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But it's
And
like, this
the
is
way
a
we
nice
see it,
piece.
it's a keepsake, the way
Yeah.
we see it. And the way we know it's working is because the staff don't see it thrown away anymore.
Right.
They used to see all these 8.5 by 11 strewn by the sidewalks and the trash. They don't see this thrown. They don't even see it in the hotel rooms anymore. They used to have.
Oh, nice.
So I think the second printing was 100,000.
Wow.
And I go like, okay, that lost a while. But within a year, that was gone. So then 30,000 more, and then we just made another order for 30,000.
That's incredible.
I know.
So was this just part of your artist in residency, or are you getting any kind of
No, that was a separate consulting.
royalties from? Okay.
No, they just paid me. I quoted a fee to do it.
Yeah.
And
Because this is like a proper illustration job you had.
it is an illustration job. Yeah,
Right.
I didn't,
And
expect it, but it was
The
lovely.
quantities you're talking about is
Yeah.
it's great.
And just like my little agreement to be the only hand-drawn product in the gift store, I was able to put a little fine print, of my Facebook page.
Oh, fantastic.
That
they let you do that, yeah.
And I tucked it in beside one of the drawings.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
I look closely enough, I am there.
Because you never know. I mean, with that quantity of these pieces being produced and going through people's hands, you never know who might look at this, who might be a book publisher or somebody needing a job, or somebody
Right.
looking at
Well,
this
someone
and seeing your
already
name.
has contacted me about doing another one for another similar property.
That is incredible.
But I wasn't that interested in expanding my reach to
Yeah.
at that point. We just now talked about some things are right at the right time.
Right. Not
Wrong at the right time or right at the wrong time.
not taking on every single possible project or avenue that you could possibly do.
But I'm just delighted that 150,000 people, I don't know,
Yeah.
might have
That's
one of
incredible.
these tucked somewhere in their bookshelf.
And the whole point of putting your name on it is for someone to see it and maybe contact you. So it's amazing.
So I do quite a number of things with Fallingwater and enjoy very
Yeah.
much the relationship we have. And we're constantly expanding the reach, like I mentioned, from high school to college to grad students to design professionals. And then next year, I really want to hunker down and do more drawing residencies. And those are very beneficial, the few that I've done. And there's a cadre of people that want to do this, to teach this.
Yeah.
Not that many around the country. And I'm beginning to recruit some colleagues who might want to be a part of this as well. So that's been fun.
We'll spread the word for that. Do you have any? I'm curious, just formally in your drawings, do you prefer drawing the exteriors of buildings, or do you like doing interiors of rooms too?
I don't have a preference.
Okay.
It's more about observation. So what I say, like in this book on travel sketching that I gave you, it's about observing the world, the built environment more carefully. Right? If you draw a scene or a building, it forces you to look more closely at the building. Take a photograph of it. There's a slim chance you'll go back to look at that photo unless you're copying some detail from it. But if you draw it, chances are you'll remember a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Even if it's a quote-unquote bad drawing of it, the fact that you're putting pencil or pen down on paper while looking at a detail or an aspect of the building enhances your experience of it.
Yeah.
So if you actually engage in the practice of travel sketching, which is, I consider, a discipline, it's not something that comes naturally when you travel, but if you engage in it, you will enjoy your trip so much more, to the point that, in fact, I make that point in this book, Travel Sketching, that I rarely buy souvenirs from the places I visit anymore.
Oh, because you've just gotten to know them so deeply through your drawing?
No, because my sketches have become my souvenirs.
Okay.
They have become my keepsakes, my personal keepsakes from these places, because when I look at them, I remember.
Yeah. And then we can, in a meta way, then we buy your book, and then we're seeing your keepsakes of the place as well.
You are.
As a keep.
But you almost need to go
My
there.
keepsake is your keepsakes.
Yes, but now you need, so like in Sketching Savannah, I organize it in constellations, you see. So what I really would love.
So Ivan has given me very kindly a copy of his Sketching Savannah book and of his travel sketching book.
You see, under this Bull Street constellation, for example, right? I've placed in dots all the places I've sketched.
Yeah.
And connected it by sort of these dashes.
It's like a walking tour.
It is, and I want one day someone to come to me randomly out of the blue in some strange place. Hey, I just did the Bull Street constellation from
Oh
your book.
yeah, I'll do that. And then your other book, so the travel sketching is specifically about Istanbul. Is that right?
It is. So
Okay.
that's more of an instructional book. It's also like a memoir.
Like instructional about drawing.
About travel sketching and its benefits, how I do it, why I do it, the different mental states I'm in when I do the different ways.
Yeah.
But because I had a significant enough body of work from Istanbul, I decided to use that as my sole source because it covered all those bases that I was trying to cover.
This must have been a really fun city to sketch in because the buildings are very Eastern.
Yes.
Is it like a melding of Eastern and Western architecture there?
Not a whole lot of Western.
Okay.
Mostly
It's a lot of domes.
a lot of domes.
It's beautiful.
But my daughter taught there for 4 years.
Okay.
She taught science in the national school, and so I made 4 trips to visit her, and that's why I was
It's very
had so
cool.
much collateral.
Yeah. And you got experience doing bridges and riverscapes as well on that.
All the above.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that one day this will make it into some curriculum as a required reading. In fact, that's going to be one of my next projects next year.
Yeah?
To get them into.
I love that.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about, so when you started your book, Sketching Savannah, did you first publish this in 2021?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes.
and it's like a collection it's over 100 sketches, so you've been working on them for years.
Yeah.
How did you decide to put it together into a book?
I had been already selling note cards of certain sketches, and they were doing okay,
Yeah.
but I got a little impatient, I guess, and I thought, what if I put them all together?
Yeah.
Then I realized, well, I don't quite have enough, so I need to do some more. So I made an effort to go around and sketch different views and scenes and buildings that I had not already covered. And one thing led to another, and then I had a body of work that I felt was about 125, 126 sketches that I thought was, hey, this could actually go into a book, but who would I market it to, right? It wouldn't be the same as how I did travel sketching. It'd be very different. This one, came up with the idea, not rocket science, that before COVID, I think the Chamber of Commerce reported 12 to 13 million tourists come to Savannah every year, and I thought, this is my local market. It's like a baked-in market. I live in Savannah. I've been sketching Savannah, and I've got 13 million tourists.
I love that you just realized you lived in a real tourism destination.
But you never pay attention to the numbers unless you start doing
the
something
numbers, yeah.
that for which it was relevant, right?
Where had you been selling your cards up until now? How were you doing that?
I just randomly brought a bunch of them down to City Market, and I found
Okay.
a retailer says, we'll give it a try.
Like you'd walk into a shop basically and
Yeah,
sell
yeah,
these
yeah.
cards.
And
Okay.
you say, anybody, we don't have a rack. Could you build a rack as well? So I go
yeah.
home and build a little plywood rack, That's how I started.
Okay.
I went to the River Street, same thing, So we'll try it in the
Yeah.
markets, the market square down there, marketplace or whatever.
You were kind of like cold calling your cards around.
I was.
Yeah.
But it was not hard because I live in Savannah. I'm there all the time. I'd been consulting with the architect designing Plein Riverside, so I was there all the time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And you said at this point in your architecture career, you're sort of like you're winding it down. So,
Yeah, I'm
you're-
trying- I'm
you've
still
got
trying
some
to-
spare time.
I'm trying to wean myself off of architecture, but it's not been easy.
Got it. Weaning down from that and weaning up into art.
Into art.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I went to the visitor center on MLK, and they got really interested, and so they bought a bunch of cards and books.
Yeah.
And then I am selling. I have a couple of panels at the Savannah Gallery of Art on
Oh, great.
Broughton, Lincoln, I think.
Yeah, it's right next to that bar, Abe's.
Yes.
They seem to be doing well. I think they got a lot of people in there.
They got a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
And then Plein Riverside picked up a whole bunch because I
That's
did
great.
a set of cards just for Plein Riverside.
Yeah. I mean, what a
Sunsets of
beautiful thing to draw.
So those selling well.
So how did you get the book published?
Right. So this was, again, I already dabbled in self-publishing with travel sketching with my other book, and I thought, okay, I can probably do this because that first book had forced me back into InDesign and Photoshop, and now
yeah.
I'm a little more familiar with it, so I had the layouts. I also found my sweet spot in terms of dimensional proportions for 7 by 9 inches, and no one does 7 by 9.
Really?
I mean, Ingram Spark doesn't do 7 by 9, do 7.25 by 9.5. And all those publishers have different standard sizes, and none of them are 7 by 9.
Yeah.
So I knew that. And if I wanted to do that size, and also if I wanted to keep the cost down, I would have to self-publish. And the biggest factor I found was that a lot of publishers don't include the option of gloss finish on the interior. And sketches and drawings and color really need to have that gloss finish to look sharp. The matte finishes just don't look.
Yeah, it's just the colors are not as saturated.
They're not as saturated. So I said, okay, how many pages? I don't know. Let's just start. And then I came up with the concept of these constellations. I glued them. I did some planning on it.
Yeah.
And I started putting some sketches together, realizing that I've got some gaps. So I went out and did a couple of sketches to fill in those gaps.
Yeah.
Realized,
And they're beautiful. They have it's your thoughts as you go through. It's sort of like a mixture of your artistic thoughts and then just actually like factoids.
And the factoids were important, I think, because if tourists come, they need to remember why, what, how, who.
Yeah.
And I sourced it from one of my colleagues at the time, Robin Williams, who runs the architectural history department. He's the chair, has been the chair of that department for over 20 years. He and his colleagues put out a book, Buildings of Savannah, and I used that as a source, and I quoted in there so I could get the most accurate information.
Yeah.
I came up with these captions. It took a while to kind of put things together, and I realized that, hey, this could become a book, you know. And so I used, a combination of InDesign, Photoshop, put together the layout myself.
Yeah, the layout is very complicated.
I did try farming out the cover design and a few other aspects like page layout using Fiverr. I never tried Fiverr. It's a resource of small business owner professionals that provide specific services like cover design.
Okay.
And so these covers were designed by, never met her, a woman in, I think, Serbia, I guess is where she's from, using my material.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
And these books are sold at eShaver.
Yeah. And anyway, to finish that process out, I had to find a printer.
Right.
And so I got quotes from different ones, and I finally found a pretty good printer that would do gloss interior, gloss exterior. The costs were okay, the timeline was great, and so I give them a try, and product's pretty good. The trickiest part was that a lot of these printing services do not include layout services. You have to pay extra for that. So you could get your InDesign layouts exactly the way you want, because then they're going to print exactly what you send them. That's a PDF. So if you have your spine text, which I learned, if it's just a hair off, they will print it a hair off.
Got it. They're not going to catch that for you.
So my second printing was a hair off.
Okay. What kind of quantities, for the first printing, just to make sure that everything was okay, what kind of quantities did you have to do?
I started with 300.
Okay.
Very low key. You pay more per copy, but I wasn't going to do any more until I knew it would sell.
Test it out.
The second was 5, and then this one is 1,000. So
cool.
I know this one.
You're on your third printing now.
Third printing.
Cool.
Yeah.
So for locals, they can get it at eShaver, and then.
Well, I got it eShaver, and Red Plant Riverside. It's at the Savannah Gallery of Art. It's at Locally Made Savannah.
Oh, that's a great shop.
It's a great little shop. I finally got it on the racks at Barnes & Noble in the Oglethorpe Mall.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And it's
then
online.
For people not in town, it's on Amazon.
Amazon and Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was another interesting process of trying to sell online, because I find it very labor intensive. Not in the producing it, but in delivering it. You have to package it, send it, bring it to the post office, and do all that. And that's in the beginning when you have a lot of orders and you could bundle your deliveries to the post office, whatever. That's fine. But if it's on a one-off basis, it's just labor intensive. But again, it's available.
You've really launched like a whole illustrator kind of career, because everything you're talking about is all the same things that I do too. Yeah, we have orders on Etsy or on your website, and shopping things around to local shops and printing them and assembling them. It's my exact career.
I'm doing it for my retirement though.
Yeah, I love that you're doing it for fun.
But as I was mentioning to you during the break, what for 50 years drawing was a means to an end. I'm looking now in my retirement to turn those means into an end, to explore what that entails. It's a little nervous about it, but it has potential.
Yeah. Is there any subject matter or talent or any type of drawing that you haven't yet done that you're curious about?
A lot. I'm actually going to embark on a different product. Most of my work, if you see it, is very tight. It's sort of a default of my having been an architect for so many years. It's the discipline, the very fine lines, and the penchant towards accuracy. All that comes from my architectural background, and I joke about it in my when I was asked to write an artist statement, how it's always these forces are at war with one another. The obligation toward accuracy and precision is at war with the inner artist trying to be like artistic,
Right.
And throw that paint on.
Gestural, emotive quality of
exactly.
it.
Exactly, and my plein air sketches show that artistic quality, but my architect side goes like, wow, that's not even close to what it looks like. And then when I go in the studio, the architect side takes over and goes, no, you got to be really accurate. And it comes out. So you can see that in my books, how the studio work is a lot tighter, more architectural. The plein air work is just loosey and goosey. And there are people who like, one style, and most of my commission work likes the architectural style.
Okay.
Don't ask me why.
So within your book, we're seeing both styles, basically.
Both styles.
Yeah, I love that.
And it sort of is a reflective of where I am in life. I'm trying to wean one off the other, but you really can't. Your life is a amalgamation of all your experiences. It's really difficult, maybe unnecessary, to try to extract one from the other.
Right.
But how does it all come together after 40 or 50 years? It's kind of where I am.
I think, it's just about accepting that there's not one is better than the other, and you can have both, and that's great, and that's okay.
And,
you have
what
both
happens
sides.
when they all come together?
Yeah, and
is it a mess?
And they're very successful both ways. So, like, you have those two aspects to your personality, and that's fine. Just accept it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's such a pleasure. Is there any kind of final things that you'd like to talk about or leave us with? Any?
Well, I guess about
Savannah or
this
art?
is one thing I'm learning about art, is that you can't put all your eggs in one basket. So I've got, as we talked about during the break, many irons in the fire. I do retail sales, I do commission work, I do some teaching, self-publishing.
Yeah.
I have a gallery.
It keeps it interesting for you.
I also teach an art class for seniors.
Oh, where is that?
It's at a nursing home called Buckingham South.
Okay.
In Havisham Woods, and it's remarkable how art can bring, how much joy it can bring to octogenarians.
It's a hard word to say. Also, and we were just talking about that doing actual hand drawing, that it helps your hippocampus and your memory.
And that's the last iron in the fire. I'm sort of more interested in pursuing the continuing education of for beginning design students and young architects who might be missing out by not being able to draw by hand.
Right.
And now, I'm not just saying it's a good thing, but showing what happens in your brain when you draw by hand, and the benefits that you could reap from it. I think it's a message that needs to get out there. I did a presentation at the AIA, the regional conference in Nashville, about a month ago, and it was well received. It was a talk specifically about the neuroscience of drawing by hand. It's a fascinating topic, and I think it's got some legs.
That's fantastic. Well, so I'll include, when I post about your interview, I'll include, a lot of photos of your books and your sketches, and if I can get a photo of that really cool accordion pamphlet that
Yeah.
you did for Fallingwater. I'd love to do that. That sounds fascinating.
I have a video clip of it.
Oh, even better.
Folds out, yeah.
Of the action of the accordion.
Action of the book.
Well, thank you, Ivan. This has been such a pleasure. Thanks for talking to us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Next up on WRUU, That Old Savannah Magic from 4 to 6 p.m. It's a variety show featuring Savannah history, radio theater, interviews, and music.
You are listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with a global soul.